This is Chapter 6, The Breaking Point, from a story called The Immortals Society, written by Anonymous. Jack Rowan was 24 years, 11 months, and 12 days old when the Society began watching him. He could feel it, the subtle hum of surveillance woven into his life like static. His phone lagged when he texted Charlie. His encrypted channels took longer to open, and the quiet guards stationed in the lobby of his building now nodded a little too precisely whenever he came or went. He'd lived long enough among them to recognize what that meant. The council suspected. New York glittered below the penthouse, as it always had, but Jack no longer saw beauty in it. The city looked like 1,000 warning lights blinking in the dark. His 25th birthday, the age of choice, loomed ahead like a sentence waiting to be pronounced. He had spent the last decade pretending to prepare for it, learning the Society's ways, investing their money, sitting at their endless meetings about secrecy and control. But every step forward had felt like a slow burial, each lesson another layer of earth covering who he once was. Only Charlie kept him human. For 14 years they had spoken in whispers, first through encrypted emails, then through secure lines, and finally in person, under false names and borrowed passports, in quiet corners of the world. Paris, Lisbon, numerous islands. Every meeting felt both dangerous and inevitable. The last time they met, Charlie had turned 24. She had a streak of sun-bleached hair now, and she carried herself with the easy grace of someone who'd built her own life. Editor, traveler, lover of oceans. She wasn't a child from camp anymore. Neither was he. They'd met in a cafe near the Eiffel Tower. "You shouldn't have come," she said, smiling away. He smiled back. "I never could listen." Now, back in Manhattan, Jack stood before the council for the first time, as an adult. The meeting chamber was circular, lined with glass that looked out on the city. The Immortals sat in a ring, each face sculpted from centuries of calm. At the center stood the chairman, tall, elegant, her eyes silver gray, like a storm was about to break. "Jack Rowan," she said, "you stand at the threshold. In 13 days, you will reach the age of choice. Have you prepared your answer?" Jack met her gaze. "I've considered it." "Consideration," she said shortly, "is the beginning of eternity." He almost laughed. "Or the end of freedom." A murmur rippled through the room. His father, seated among them, gave a faint shake of his head, as if to say, "Enough." But Jack didn't stop. "I've studied your history," he said. "I've seen the departed files. You talk about responsibility, but what you mean is control. The Society doesn't protect the world. It hides from it. You call it eternity, but you live in fear." The chairwoman's voice didn't rise, but the air seemed to tighten around her. "Fear," she said, "is what keeps the mortal alive. You, Jack, have the choice to move beyond it, to stand among us forever unchanged." He hesitated. Her words should have tempted him. They always had. But now, when he thought of forever unchanged, all he could see was Charlie, her eyes alive with a light that changed every time he saw her. "Maybe I don't want to be unchanged," he said quietly. A silence fell, like glass shattering in slow motion. The chairwoman's smile didn't reach her eyes. "We'll speak again when the day comes." That night, Jack slipped out of the penthouse. He knew how to avoid the watchers now. Through the maintenance lift, past the hidden service corridor, down to the streets where the noise of the traffic drowned out the hum of surveillance. He took a cab to the Lower East Side and walked into a small, forgotten bookstore, lit only by string lights. Charlie was waiting inside. She turned when the bell above the door rang. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she smiled, and the whole world narrowed to that single expression. "You look tired," she said softly. "I've been hunted by 1,000 immortals," he said. "Tired's the least of it." She stepped closer. "Then why risk it?" "Because I needed to see you." They sat in the corner, surrounded by the smell of old paper and rain-soaked pavement. Jack told her everything, the council, the choice, the surveillance. When he finished, Charlie reached across the table and took his hand. "So this is it," she said. "You have to decide." He nodded. "If you choose immortality, what happens to me?" He looked down. "You could choose it too, if you wanted." Her hand tightened. "You mean become like you?" "It's possible," he said, The society allows for it. He hesitated, the word catching in his throat. For love. Charlie's eyes softened, then filled with quiet pain. And if I don't want to live forever? Jack met her gaze, his voice barely a whisper. Then I'll lose you. She reached up, touched his chest. Jack, you'll lose yourself if you don't make your own choice. The following days passed in silence. Jack withdrew from the council, from his family, from everything. He stayed in the penthouse, staring out at the skyline that had once looked endless and now seemed like a cage. His mother came to him once, at sunset. Jack, she said gently, we've given you everything. A life without pain, without loss. Why are you fighting it? He looked at her, beautiful, untouched by time, her eyes still carrying the same old sadness. Because without pain and loss, he said, it's not life, it's just survival. She said nothing, only turned and left. For the first time, he saw her silhouette tremble as she closed the door. The night before his 25th birthday, Jack went to the rooftop. The city stretched out below, lights winking like dying stars. He took out his compass, the same one his mother had given him at 10. The needle spun once, then pointed west. He smiled faintly. Still her. Behind him, footsteps. His father. Leaving? Adrian asked quietly. I haven't decided, Jack said. Yes, you have, Adrian replied. You just don't want to admit it. Jack turned. Do you ever regret your choice? A long silence. Every day, his father said finally. But regret fades. Everything fades, eventually. Jack stared at him. Then what's the point of forever? Adrian looked away, toward the skyline. Maybe to wait for something that doesn't fade. Jack held the compass tight, his heart hammering. I already found that. He stepped back toward the elevator. Jack, his father said, his voice low. If you walk out that door, you won't be one of us anymore. I was never one of you, Jack said. I was just born into your eternity. Then he pressed the elevator button and disappeared into the dark. No one saw him again in the society's towers. Rumors spread that he'd vanished, that he'd been erased, that he'd joined the departed. But somewhere, far from New York, near a quiet lake ringed with birch trees, two figures stood at the edge of the water. Charlie turned to him, her breath misting in the dawn air. You really did it, she whispered. Jack nodded. I chose. And now? He smiled. Now I live. The compass hung at his neck, its needle pointing west, not toward eternity, but toward something far more fragile, and far more real. That was Chapter 6, The Breaking Point, from a story called The Immortals Society, written by Anonymous. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again next time.